Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to NCFA's webinar on exploring the key adult skills fund qualifications within the childcare and early years education sector. So a little bit of run through what we're going to go through today. And we're going to do a couple of slides, just an overview on the adult skills fund and some other adult funding that's related to the childcare and early years sector qualifications. And I'm going to pass over to our sector specialist, Janet King, who's going to go through some of the key qualifications that we offer in this area. Then go into a panel discussion when we've got some external colleagues from Amanda from Learning Curve Group, and we've got Sharon Marsh from the Best Practice Network, who both obviously work in this sector. And then we'll go to a Q&A section after that. The chat function will be open throughout, so if you've got any questions that you want to ask, drop them in the chat, and we'll answer the questions when we can through the chat function. So just to start off, so obviously, main focus of this webinar is around the Adult Skill Fund and other adult funding opportunities that are there to support individuals to enter the sector and gain the skills and knowledge they need and the qualifications to be successful within this sector as well. And we know there's been an increase in the need for childcare places because of governmental reform. So the adult skills sort of funding is a big way that we can support and get people into the sector to enhance the sector as a whole. So there's a couple of things on the Adult Skills Fund. Obviously, there's two different versions of the Adult Skills Fund, which was better known or previously known as the Adult Education Budget. And there's the national pot, and then there's the devolved regional funding pot in there as well. And as more and more local authorities become devolved, they get their own sort of ownership of the Adult Skills Fund, and they can utilise it to fund qualifications that not necessarily are funded nationally to meet their local needs and skills needs in their areas. So there's two ways in there, and ultimately both pots are there to basically allow adults to train and gain the employability skills and technical skills they need to enter key sectors where there was gaps and job opportunities for progression within those areas. So it is really, really important for adults who want to enter any sector, but especially the childcare sector. Outside of the Adult Skills Fund, there are some other funding opportunities as well. So while the Adult Skills Fund is a main driver, there is also the opportunity to access adult advanced learner loans for qualifications that are level 4, 5, and 6 qualifications where people want to progress and develop themselves within key sectors. Got the free courses for jobs, which is for adults aged 19 and over. And if they don't already hold a level 3 qualification, it's a great opportunity for individuals who maybe qualified at level 2 or working in the sector and want to progress their career. And it's a good opportunity for them to access funding to gain that first level 3 qualification and then move through their learning journey and career path as they see fit. We've also got skills boot camps. Again, that's for level 3 and above provision. And that's both regulated and unregulated provision in key sectors. We've got sector-based work academies, which is level 2 based activities and funded programs that, again, assist people to progress into work and employment within the sectors that they're looking for. And then obviously traineeships, which is for 19 to 24-year-olds. There was traineeships for pre-19, but there is specific traineeships for 19 to 24-year-olds. And I think it's probably one of the lesser used funding pots, but it's important to know that it's there. And obviously with all of these funding pots for learners, it's accessing the providers who have gained contracts to deliver the provision under these funding streams, which I say from a learner point of view is contacting those key providers and understanding what funding opportunities those providers offer, but actually also for the providers to promote that for learners within their area. So again, I don't want to dwell too much on the funding. We just want to give an overview. The key thing is understanding and promoting and sharing our offer in this, and the importance that we hold within promoting the childcare and early years sector qualifications to enhance the sector as a whole. So that's enough for me from now. So I'm going to pass on to our sector manager, Janet King, and she's going to take you through the rest of the slides.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. You're very welcome, and we're very grateful for the time that you're giving to us this afternoon. So just going to give you a bit of a spotlight and a sort of tiny glimpse and insight into some of the qualifications that might be of interest to you in relation to adult skills funding as well. So you can see what we have on this slide here. So the level 2 certificate in an introduction to caring for children and young people. So as well as what we have there, and you can read that on the slide, but this is a qualification that offers that flexibility and agility to cater for tailor-made interests of your learners, really, with those exit points at award level for babysitting and also preparation for the responsibilities of parenting. It adds further benefits of progression to the level 2 diploma and is made up of credits from a combination of both mandatory and optional units. And it's those optional units that can really give it that tailor-made agility feel. The guided learning hours for that particular qualification is 117. If we think now about the level 2 certificate in understanding adverse childhood experiences, this is a qualification that has become increasingly popular. And I guess because we know a lot more now about neuroscience, about trauma, about the impact, and about significantly about our own role as childcare and early years practitioners in terms of being able to support, to recognise, to support, to apply strategies. And there's a really good sort of CPD qualification. So it considers what adverse childhood experiences are, as you would expect it to, the importance of those connections, relational connections and attachment, those positive relationships, before going on to explore the significance of the practitioner's own role. So the 3 units included as part of this qualification are exploring childhood and family dynamics, an introduction to adverse childhood experiences. What is theory telling us about those ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and what strategies can we use to help to recognise, to help to support, and ultimately to improve outcomes for our children and young people. As we move on to the next slide, we can have a look at 2 more very popular qualifications in this field. So I mentioned there about our sort of increased awareness of neuroscience, and I think it's that increased accessibility to understanding early brain development. So what this qualification does is help to simplify and to give breadth and depth in a way that our early years practitioners can make good sense of. So obviously, it's going to be focusing on neuroscience and early brain development. It's made up of 2 units, and both units would need to be achieved to get the full award. And that's looking at understanding neuroscience and understanding self-regulation and how to nurture this in children from birth to 7. And I think what's really significant there is that sort of understanding our own role again. So excellent CPD qualifications and just finding out more about the connections there and the links between neuroscience and what's going on and the impact of our experiences and how we can support children through self-regulation and that approach through co-regulation as staff within settings. And finally, on this slide, we have the Level 1 award, which is an introduction to early years settings, consisting of a combination of mandatory and optional units. And this one, the previous one, had got a guided learning hour of 105, that's the neuroscience, and this one is a very short qualification, and that's got a guided learning hour of 51. And that's a really nice taster opportunity. If somebody's thinking about entering the sector, if somebody is returning to education, if somebody's just thinking about coming into adult education, it's something that would give them a little bit of a taste of what this qualification could bring from them. And we speak to many students up and down the country that start with this level 1 or something similar, and have gone on to find and secure employment and work their way through level 2 and level 3 and beyond. So it's amazing to recognise and appreciate that these stepping stones are very significant. So that's just a glimpse, as I say, of some of the qualifications that we have. So moving on, please. Okay, this is good because this is one of my favourite bits because I love engaging with the sector. It goes with the territory of my title. So really, really pleased to be able to introduce Amanda Shaw, childcare tutor from the Learning Curve group, and also Sian Marsh from the Early Years and Initial Teacher Training Director at Best Practice Network. You're very welcome and thank you very much for your time. I think it might be nice for the people who are listening today if we just did a quick hello and a little introduction, saying a little bit perhaps about what you do within your organisations. And that's a bit of a curveball. Didn't warn you about that, so I hope you're all right with that. And Sian, I can see you on camera, so are you okay to go first? Just a little introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Hi, everyone. My name's Sian Marsh. I'm the Early Years and ITT Director at Best Practice Network. And we are predominantly an independent training provider. We've had a long standing history and working relationship with NCFE to deliver early years qualifications from level 2 up to level 5, and we tend to do that predominantly through an apprenticeship route, but we've also very successfully over the last 2 years delivered the NCFE level 3 qualification for Senkos in early year settings, and we've over 2 years working in partnership with the DFE and NCFE trained over 7,000 people through that qualification.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Sian. And Amanda, may I welcome you to the panel, please? Would you like to say a quick hello and a little bit about the work that you're doing at Learning Curve? Thank you.
Hi, Janet. Hi, everyone. So I'm Amanda Shaw. So I'm a childcare tutor working at Learning Curve Group. So I've only been with them for a few months, but I'm working with the employability team. So we deliver apprenticeships, employability courses, flexible learning, and as Sian said there, we've also had a really good long-standing partnership with NCFE, and we deliver lots and lots and lots of courses. I don't even want to put a number on it, but I know that we support over 70,000 learners every year through NCFE, through all the different options that we offer.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Sian. Thank you, Amanda. So we're going to, I think it's really good. What's good about having you on the call is the fact that people that are listening will be able to relate to what you're doing, to the experiences that you're having. So it brings the qualifications alive. It brings the idea of actually working with adult learners alive. And to be able to sort of run through that a little bit more, there are a few questions, if I may. So I'm going to come to you, Sian, first of all, if that's okay. So if we move on to that first question, thank you, Andy. Okay, so here we go. It's not very informal. Okay, so let's just keep it very conversational. But for you, what would you say are the benefits of offering NCFE qualifications to your adult learners?
Well, I think firstly, you know, one of our values as an organisation is that we believe that every child should have access to an excellent education. But in order to do that, every practitioner working with children should also be supported to be their best. And I think the way our partnership with NCFE works well is that our vision and our values align. The qualifications that we deliver on behalf of NCFE are purposeful. They give adult learners that opportunity to learn something with us in a classroom context, and the very next day put that into practice with the children that they're working with. So they're very well structured. They're relevant to what practitioners are doing in their day-to-day work. And we also hear from employers who say to us that those practitioners, you know, that they are skilled and they are you know, of high value in their settings. But it's also about upskilling and this, you know, adult learners being able to see a progression route, I think, through early years. Sometimes it has to be said that it's not an easy landscape to navigate. There's an awful lot of qualifications out there, and I think what's really good about NCFE is those progression routes are clear. So, you know, our adult learners know that if they start with us at level 2, there's clear progression routes, and they can go all the way up to level 5 and beyond if they want to.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Sian. And I think what you said there about something that resonated from what you said was about they can come along, they might be taking qualifications that are predominantly around professional development, and the SENDCO qualification being an absolutely brilliant example of that, and then use it in their setting. And that's, for me, that's the magic of CPD qualifications, that we're not just gaining new knowledge for ourselves, albeit that's a wonderful thing, but we're applying that. And I think the early years sector is really something that is dependent on that upskilling, isn't it, to make sure, and obviously the babies, the children, the families that we are serving actually then are getting the best up-to-date knowledge and skills that they deserve as well. So thank you. Thanks, Sian. Okay, Amanda, I think I'm coming to you for the next question. So what made you choose NCFE qualifications for your adult learners at Learning Curve?
So
Does anything jump out?
So yeah, so like I was saying, we've had such a good long-standing partnership with NCFE, and I know from my own learning in the past that NCFE's reputation is nationally recognised. You were the awarding body to go with for childcare, especially when I was doing my training. So to work with you again, and for Learning Curve to work with you, I think it's because of that positive reputation that you've got, particularly within the early years sector, but I know that goes across several sectors now. From a quality perspective as well, NCFE have just been, they're so supportive, and I know that from working where I am now and from previous employments as well, that the support that you provide, you know, you're at the end of an email if we need any questions, or a phone call, and the EQA process is so simple. And just building on what Sian was saying there about the qualifications being the way that they're laid out is so supportive for the learners, you know, that they start at that starting point within the qualification, and they build upon that knowledge, and they can use that to challenge concepts and theories as they go on. So yeah, so I think just that flexibility as well for the delivery is just so easy for everyone to follow as well. And I think from our perspective, working with you to develop those qualifications that we use ourselves, as well as supporting other providers as well to use, is just been so supportive. And going with that reputation, it helps everyone, both sides of the partnership.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, something that I just want to develop from that, you talked about, you know, well, both of you actually talked about that progression from level 1, level 2 and beyond, and having that trajectory, if you like, which isn't always easy, and it isn't always that straightforward in any occupation, but making sure that qualifications are there. And sometimes that's the shorter qualifications, isn't it? The ones that we've just looked at, and the SENDCO qualification as well, those short CPD that can actually make that massive difference to somebody when they're upskilling, when they're settled in their occupation, when they're actually working in the sector, and just being able to progress further. And I think as well, sometimes we kind of undervalue level one. And for me, level one and level two is such a significant part of our demographic. And there are so many people who really just need that encouraging first step. And level one and level two qualifications really do offer that. And so for me, there'll always be a sort of special place for my level two students, or for level two type qualifications, because they're often the biggest and boldest and bravest decisions that those students make, and then they go on to blossom, and it's a really wonderful thing to see. So thank you, and thank you for all the wonderful things you've shared. Okay, so Sian, I do want to return, if I may, to this question here, because I think it really does relate to the wonderful things that you've done with the students that have gone on to do that SEND qualification in particular, but anything that that you can relate to tell us about the impact that you think the NCFE qualifications have had on your adult learners. And I appreciate that they're learning something and then they're applying it straight away, and that's wonderful. Is there anything else that you could bring around the impact, do you think?
Yeah, certainly. I think, if we look at a qualification like the SENCO qualification, we've got an EYFS, so all settings have to nominate a SENCO, but it doesn't mandate that SENCO has to be trained to a particular level. And what we found over the 2 years that we've been delivering the qualification is that we might be working with people who've had the SENCO role in name for some time, but it's a really isolating role. If you're a SENCO in a setting, we know coming out of the pandemic, there were an awful lot of children whose development was not where we expected it to be. And also there was a lot of pressure on settings to identify those special educational needs with children and families in the early years. That's a real challenge. And what we found, the impact of that qualification has actually been on the confidence of our adult learners, the confidence of that SENCO. The comments that we've had back with people saying, I knew I had to do certain things, like find out about the local offer, or make a referral for funding for a child in my care, but I didn't really understand the reasons why. I didn't understand the graduated approach, and the importance of making those connections with other professionals. So I think the impact on adult learners has actually been about empowering them to do the job that they're doing to improve outcomes for children, but also being that advocate in their setting. And we've looked at, we gather lots of evaluation data, and 99% of our candidates, and that's 7,000 of them that have gone through the programme, said that they felt more knowledgeable and more confident in their SENCO role as a result of undertaking that NCFE qualification than they had when they started. But we didn't stop there, because we asked setting managers as well, and we said, what's the impact been on the setting? And setting managers said to us, we've got better working relationships with parents, we've got happier children, we've got a SENCO who can also share that knowledge with practitioners in our setting, and the benefit of this qualification is that they're upskilling the colleagues that they're working with. So you can see an impact both on improving outcomes for children, but also about raising the quality of education and care that our SENCOs are delivering.
Fantastic. And before qualifications like this, in particular, SEND is a good example. Adverse childhood experiences may be another good example. But we had it was perhaps practitioners who expressed an interest. Oh, I'm really interested in working with children with special educational needs or disability. And the actual, so great experiences, great rapports, great empathy was being demonstrated and displayed. But the role of the SENCO is much broader, isn't it? It's much wider, and it needs to be that advocate, doesn't it? And it needs to be that that sort of connection to all the external services, you know, early referrals and all of the more complex stages that need to go on to make sure that we're advocating for that child. The way that we approach and the nurturing, absolutely, we need to be able to do that as early years educators, full stop. But I think having an interest in something is just the step to be able to say, right, come on then and find out more, rather than that used to be once upon a time enough to be able to take on the role. So yeah, thank you very much. We have just one last question, and I'm going to come to Amanda. If I can come to you first of all to be able to comment on this question, and then we can perhaps just have any closing remarks, Sian or Amanda. So Amanda, how has adult funding been accessed to support learners to progress?
So for us, the Adult Skills Fund has been huge because it removes so many barriers for learners, especially obviously the adult learners, because sometimes they don't realise that they can get access to that. And as Sian was saying, that confidence as well sometimes to access the courses, especially today where there's, you know, the cost of living is obviously an issue for a lot of people. And they often think, well, I can't afford to go and do that course. For example, we had a learner who is actually one of our big success stories, who had a really troubled past. She had her children taken away from her, and her probation officer actually recommended that she did a course with us, and she started on the level 2 course for children. And she progressed to a level 3. She did her functional skills, and she ended up doing an access course, and then went on. She's now at university doing a midwifery course, and that was all because she could access that funding. Because without that, she wouldn't have been able to do that, and that wouldn't have been sort of a positive outcome for her, especially with her troubled past. Literally yesterday, we had another learner come through who was expressing her gratitude and appreciation. She did courses such as the Challenging Behaviour Level 2, the Childcare Level 2, Health and Social Care Level 1, and she's now acquired a job in care as an activities coordinator. Again, she wouldn't have been able to do that if she hadn't had that access to that funding. I think as well, there's a lot of misconceptions that education for adults is something that you need to pay for, and without that funding, a lot of people would struggle to get back into work or change career. And for the early years, as Sian was mentioning there, and you mentioned about upskilling staff within employment as well. Within the early years, they're struggling for funding at the moment with the changes in how many children, you know, the hours for the children and everything. And for example, the neuroscience and the ACEs is so supportive in early years to upskill staff just to get their CPD up to date, to help them progress as well. Like Sian was saying, getting that SENCO into schools, because that is something that's quite big in the news at the moment about supporting those children with special educational needs. So yeah, I think it is so important to support the adult learners, and I think without it, a lot of people wouldn't be able to get that training and support them back into employment. And it's not just the courses. They're getting support again to develop their confidence, to develop their skills with CV writing, with interview techniques, and just that wider skills. I mean, for me, the level 2 early years practitioner course that I'm delivering, the learners didn't understand what Poppy Day was about, like the Remembrance Day. They didn't understand the concept of what the poppy represented. So for me, being able to explain that to them is for adults to understand that, they can then set that onto their children as well, and it keeps that Remembrance Day tradition alive, and it reminds them about everything that happened in the past and why it happened. So it's not just the qualification, it's those wider skills that they're developing as well within those courses.
Thank you. And I'm going to stay with you, Amanda, just before I
Okay.
come back to close. There's one final question that I'm just going to share with you. But before we do, I think what you've both touched on all the way through is that the critical significance of lifelong learning, and whether, we talk about lifelong learning, but what I think it does for childcare and early years in particular, I'm only interested in that, let's be honest. But what I think it does for our sector is, you use the word empower, Sian, and I think it really does empower, it really does upskill, but it's professionalizing our sector, isn't it, in every way that it can. And I think our sector deserves that. So thank you very much for your contributions there. So this final question, Amanda. So how can you best support providers to meet the needs of adult learners?
So at Learning Curve, like I've said several times, we work closely with NCFE, and our in-house curriculum team actually develop the accredited and endorsed qualifications in line with NCFE qualifications, and those are available. Not only do we use them, but we also sell those to 250 plus partner colleges and learning providers that we work with. We use really high quality training and resources using our online systems, and those can either be used online or blended. So it depends on the individual training provider what they want to do, and we can work with partners, colleges, training providers just to create a blended support for them and a qualification that they can use with their learners. So if anyone that would benefit from that chat, just get in touch and we can support them with that moving forward. Because we support 70,000 just on our own, but in total it's into hundreds of thousands that we support across the whole of the country, from down in London all the way up to Scotland. So yeah, we're not just in one area, we're not just in the northeast, we support several across, and our curriculum covers, like I said before, it's not just for all this is early years. I know we don't just cover early years, but we have several courses within early years and education that we can support with.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Now, if we were going to have any sort of closing remarks, but that you wanted just to share with our wonderful delegates that are on the webinar today. So, Sian, is there anything that you would like to say just to in summary before we close the panel?
Yeah, I think, CPD is, as you said, Janet, really important in the early years sector. We can't always promise the best pay and conditions in early years. We know the barriers to that, but what we can give people coming into the sector is a recognised qualification. We can give them the opportunities to come into the sector and to stay, and in that journey, that they're getting something not just that's going to benefit their setting, but benefits them as an individual. And there's nothing better, is there, than having a qualification that you can take away with you to the next setting, or that would enable you to progress and get promotion. So
yeah,
I think having that recognised qualification and badge is something that we can offer the sector, and we can give them those opportunities to progress.
Yeah, love it. So I'm going to take some key words there. So growth, and I'm going to stick with that empowerment, and also the quality and that progression. So wonderful words. Amanda, is there anything you'd like to just add to Sian's comments there to close before we close the panel?
I think it's just mirroring exactly what Sian just said there. I think she put it in a really good little nutshell. Well done. I can't think of a better way to say what she said. So yes, it's just so important for the CPD. I think early years and education is one of the biggest growth areas. That everything changes every day, and you've got to keep up with it. And I think if the CPD wasn't available, then it would be hard to do that. So you've got to keep up with your CPD just to keep that empowerment of learners and the CPD up to date. So yeah.
Absolutely, thank you, and thank you very much for your time to the panel there. I do want to just spend a little bit of time now on the next slide. I want to talk to you about something new that's coming. We've been talking about the need for lifelong learning. We've been talking about adult skills funding, and we've been talking about the need to remain as up to date as we possibly can. And so this is a new qualification that's going to be live from the 31st of January, so not long now. And this is going to be, as it says there, a level 3 award in working with babies and young children under 2. And I think if we think about the early years foundation stage, for example, there's been a requirement for specialist training in there, but it's been quite difficult to actually sort of pinpoint, well, what does that training really mean? So we gave some thought to sort of, again, raising that confidence and being able to empower. I like these words, Sian, I'm pinching all your words, and to be able to support the practitioners working in the sector, in baby rooms in particular, but studying and working towards and being ready and having those skills. So it's a 1-unit qualification which focuses on how the holistic care and educational needs of babies and young children under 2 are met by practitioners. It explores the statutory requirements of the Early Years Framework, the EYFS, along with non-statutory guidance, development matters and birth to 5 matters. Safeguarding and welfare requirements will also be considered, and our own practice evaluated for improved ways of working. So the qualification itself has been designed to engage practitioners in specialist training when caring for babies under 2, children under 2, as identified in those statutory requirements. And an early years setting refers to any professionals that care for babies and young children. So we could be thinking of childminders, we could also be thinking of parents who want to learn a little bit more about this particular area. But the main purpose was, again, additional CPD. So of course on its own it's not a full and relevant qualification. It's a professional development, a unit of study to improve professional skills for practitioners working or volunteering with this age group, and the qualification includes knowledge and skills. So just wanted to give you a little bit of heads up of that qualification that's coming soon, and a nice little unit, and you can see the GL there of 40, and really supporting those specialist training needs. There's nothing worse than working with students and thinking, oh, I don't want to work, don't put me with the babies, Janet, the babies don't do anything. And actually what we know and what we understand as professionals, and the work that we have to do to be able to get the truth out of that statement and turn that statement around. So this qualification helps, and it helps not only to acknowledge and appreciate what's going on in those first very crucial 2 years, but also to upskill and to give opportunities to staff to be able to learn a little bit more, and to validate the work that they do as well, and celebrate the hard work that they do. So that was just a little bit of insight into that, and now I believe I'm passing back to Andy for some Q&A. Do you want me to open the Q&A, Andy, and see, or can you see it?
I can see a couple, so I think thank you, that it was really interesting, and thank you everybody for their input in that, and really capturing the essence of the childcare and early years sector. So there's a couple of questions just come through from the baby qual, especially around funding. We don't know what funding it's going to get in a minute, because we don't get told that till it's live, and then we'll get the information back off the ASF. So we are waiting for that. Obviously there is the post-16 reform, level 3 and below, qualification reform ongoing, and there's been pause in funding and that. So the funding landscape is in a bit of flux, but we are asking if it'll be funded. We are looking to put this in as one of the reform qualifications, which, if it's accepted as a reform qualification, it will get national funding. But again, the funding, as soon as we've been told anything about the funding, we will share that across all our customers to make sure our hope is it is, but we don't dictate that. We launch a qualification and then we're told, yeah, it's funded in these funding streams. But I think everybody I've spoke to internally and externally, there's a massive need for a qualification of this type. Just again, as Janet and other colleagues said, is to gain confidence in working with babies and children under 2, because it is daunting if you're not used to working with children at that age. So the importance of the qualifications, then it's recognised. We're hoping that funding comes. Obviously that's the national funding picture. There is also the opportunity in, I think there is one region where Merrill Combined Authority is looking to fund it regionally. So thinking about the Adult Skills Fund, you've got the national pot, which is governed. The government will decide, or the ASF will decide, what qualifications are funded under the national pot. But actually, if there's a local need in a Merrill Combined area, as a provider, you've got every opportunity to go to them and say, look, there's a need for this qualification. We want it, say, will you fund it? And a lot of Merrill Combined authorities will fund a qualification, even though it's not funded nationally. Again, that's outside of our control, and we wish we could influence that. But I think if you're working in a devolved region and you think that qualification is going to be good and you can see the customer base for that, I encourage you to go and speak to your Merrill Combined Authority, your funding contact within that Merrill Combined Authority, to have that conversation saying, look, this is going to fill the need. This is going to obviously upskill the individuals in the areas that we want. Will you fund it? And again, with the importance of it, we're hoping the answer is yes. So there's 2 ways to look at the funding on that. And I think there's the question there, is it on learning curve? It isn't at the minute, but obviously with no learning curve, we'll be looking at qualifications, and if it's something that they want to do, they will do that and promote that, any materials that go alongside that. I don't know if you've heard anything on that, Amanda.
I haven't heard anything exactly, but I know that they're aware of the qualification being developed, so I'm sure that they are on it. I will certainly ask, and I will update you, so you can update the participants if they wish.
Excellent. Thanks, Amanda. So there's another couple of questions come through. Can you see the questions, Janet?
Yes, so I'm just
There's a
looking
nice
at.
long one, and rather than me trying to read out and misinterpret it, I think.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Q&A section. So forgive me if I don't answer the right question.
It's in the chat. I think in the chat there's
Oh,
questions in the chat function.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to take a couple that are around the same theme that are from the Q&A around placement. So I'll start with those, and then I go back to the chat, or you can read the chat question out. It might be easier than me trying to scroll and find it, Andy. But we've all got better things to do than watch me scroll up and down on a screen. But when I'm looking at what's here in the Q&A, yes, there are a couple of practical assessments. However, what we have done is appreciate that those can be done through reflection, through expert witness testimony, through professional discussion. So it doesn't require, we always like to say that best practice is that direct observation, but it doesn't require that. So we do acknowledge that this is not a full and relevant qualification. It could be being used as part of, as part of that regulated qualification offer, or it could be standalone for upskilling our staff. And so we appreciate that we've got to be a little bit more flexible and agile. So yes, there are skills, but those skills can be achieved without assessor direct observation. So you can use professional discussion, reflective account, and so on. I hope that answers some of those questions on there around the practice. I am going to scroll down now just to see if there's any more about practice or anything along the same lines.
Yeah, I think just as you're scrolling there, Jan, I've spotted another one about free funding for jobs, free courses for jobs. What I'll do, I'll take that away and I'll respond, because with it being a question around the guidance, I don't want to give wrong information. I'll go away and I'll check the guidance, and I will respond back to Kirsty on that.
Okay. Okay. And was there anything else in the chat for me that I can help with on that baby call or
Yeah,
anything else, Andy?
So there was a couple of questions in the chat. One was, we are offering the level 1 intro to early year settings for the first time this year. How realistic is it that learners will preferably be volunteering in nursery settings? Because currently we pay for DBS checks, placements with level 2 STLs, but due to the short nature of this course, this would probably be unattainable for little more learners and local nurseries. Seems like
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so sorry, just give me the name of the qualification again. Oh, I found it now. The level 1 intro to
Yeah.
early years settings. Okay. It's a knowledge only qualification, I believe, that qualification. So it's beneficial. We all know that it's beneficial to be having that exposure to placement. And if there's exposure to placement, then you will need to go through those DBS checks. I think you can be careful in your selection when you put those credits together of those optional units. But we can chat about that, because if it's a taster day, you know, there might be other things that you can do with early years settings to avoid that long-term placement. So yeah, do get in touch, and I'll put my email in the chat, and we can talk about that some more. But if it's a knowledge only qualification, then preferred and preference is not mandated. So we can chat that through and see what you do and how we can work around it.
And I think there's one more question around about the level 4 cert for
Okay.
early years advanced practitioner. It says, has a unit which refers to PANCO.
Yes.
This is no longer a requirement, so what are the implications for teaching this unit? Is the specification being updated?
Okay, so we've got no intention of removing the physical activity nutrition coordinator unit from there. Again, I've put my email in there, and I'm very happy to take conversation offline to talk about the qualification itself and any further implications. But physical activity and nutrition coordinators are still something that are valued by settings, still valued by families and by staff, etc., and bring a lot to the early years setting in terms of sharing information about nutrition and so on. So more than happy to chat that through and to see if we can again find a way forward that might be helpful for you.
And there's a question here, will the qual specs remain the same for the quals that are becoming reform qualifications? So with regards to the reforms qualifications, there will be new qualifications, and I have got a slide which I'm going to share those reform qualifications in the childcare and early years sector that we're launching from August 2025. What I will say, if there is a dual qualification, so we're launching a new one because it's met new reform criteria, we are launching that one built to that spec. We're not switching the old qualifications off, so there will be 2 qualifications in some instances. Sometimes we're not. Well, off the top of my head, we've got the level 3 Montessori qualification. The reform qualification is a direct replacement to the current qualification, and the current qualification will be losing all of its funding. So it doesn't make sense to keep both because they are identical qualifications. But we will not be switching anything off if the funding is remaining and things like that until we've got a transition period for when the new qualifications come in. So the reform qualifications are specific reform qualifications that we've had to develop in line with the requirements of the reforms. And what you'll find they'll have in their titles like specialty qualifications or occupational and technical occupational entry qualifications are built into the titles. So you can see from the titles which will be reform quals. And again, I will be showing that list in a minute. But yeah, if there is a current quality reform qual, in majority of cases we are keeping both until there is a transition, because some of them are retaining the funding as well. Another question there, Janet, we've been offering NCFE cash qualifications level 1 to 5 for 2 years. However, we've not been able to access any funding. Can you help? I suppose the funding, it's a necessary evil with regards to funding. And I don't know if Sharon or Amanda can talk this. It's getting those funding contracts. We know that the qualifications get funded, but it's getting one of those funding contracts and putting a bid in for them and being successful in those bids. And I know it is a pain from a provider point of view around that. So all we can say is we can support from the qualification side, and we can inform which qualifications are already funded and which attract the funding. But with regards to accessing that funding, it is very much a bidding process. And I know it has got its challenges within there. Another one, so level 3 home-based childcare is not currently available on LCG's platform. One for you, Amanda. I've had some comment back to LCG, so thank you for all the input. Oh, that's from Emma. That's from Emma, a learning curve. Anyway, sorry, Emma. I thought we were asking a question there.
That's lovely to hear about the early years educator qualification. That's nice. Thank you.
I'll just check the Q&A in case there's anything else from us in there. The new level 3 qual, does this impact on ratios in settings? I think that's a baby qual. That was from Kirsty.
Okay, so the specialist baby qualification doesn't impact on any ratios or anything like that, but those staff that are working, you know, the 1-to-3 ratio that's currently in place remains in place. But there is a requirement, and I think it's always been there. We've just not really investigated it fully as to what it means, but that staff working with babies and children under 2 should receive specialist training, but we're never really clear on, well, what could that mean? So that's what led us to sort of investigate this a little bit further and to raise that confidence and to make sure that staff and students were having the opportunities with the most up-to-date evidence-based research to help them apply that in their practice.
And I think that's all of the questions for now. So as I've said, this is a list, and they said we're not going to go in a lot into the reform qualifications because we have got a separate activity going alongside this. But you can see there's a number of qualifications within the childcare and early years sector that are being relaunched as reform qualifications by NCFE in August 2025. And he said the recording will be shared, so you will have this information in there. There's some of the qualifications where in the past they were available for 16 to 19, where there's crossover for T levels and other occupational qualifications. They are now just adult only qualifications. So you see down the left hand side, we have a mix of qualifications that are only going to be funded for adults only, but some that will be funded for 16 to 19 and adults within there. And again, some of the current ones will be defunded from July, some won't, and we are retaining the qualifications where we know there is funding there, but we won't be switching anything off until we've done that full transition. If you want any more information and more in-depth information about the reform qualifications in this sector, we are running a post-16 reforms webinar on the education and early years sector, and that's running on the 7th of February. It is, you can go on our website and you can book a place on that, and I would encourage you to, because it just gives you that oversight of some of the changes that's coming, but and better prepare you for those qualifications. A lot of the qualifications are like for like qualifications because they were the up-to-date versions of qualifications, and we just had to resubmit them as part of the reforms piece of work. So yeah, I would encourage anybody to book a place on that webinar to get some full information around the reform qualifications. And if you any questions or anything you think of from today, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You see, we've got the websites on the slides there. And again, the slides will be shared. And just to close, I want to think again, thank you to Janet, to Sean, to Amanda. There's some great information there, and I hope everybody on the webinar has found it very useful. And again, in a very changing landscape.